So who would like to go first? Should we go by alphabet in alphabetical order? Or somebody who would like to go first?
Yeah, I don't mind
Oh,
going
so
first.
we have our our third panelist here. So great. All right. So Dr. Dadiblo, please, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you all. My name is Stephen Dadublo, and I'm an assistant professor in the School of Journalism, Writing, and Media at the University of British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. I do research in public deliberation, political discourse, rhetorical theory, decolonial rhetorics, and I teach undergraduate classes as well in writing studies.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, Miss Kwam.
Hi, Beatrice Kwam, second year PhD student in the Rhetoric Theory and Culture program at Michigan Technological University. My research interest is usually surveillance studies, particularly data surveillance. And since my program is more of an interdisciplinary one, I sometimes do crisis and political rhetoric and anything that comes my way that I think is of interest to me. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Lamte.
Okay, yeah. So, thank you so much. And my name is Linford Lamte, and I'm a teaching assistant teaching professor at the University of Washington in Seattle, and I am in the Department of English, and the programs of writing across campus. And next week we'll be on our own program called Technical and Professional Communication Unit within the Department of English. So basically, we were hired to develop a technical and communication program. So that was kind of my field of interest more at this point. I am also interested in the community engagement, and so I'm teaching grant writing this year. So yeah, thank you.
All right, so thank you so much for the introductions. And so we're going to kickstart. And so for those of us who just joined, this panel discussion is basically for prospective students as well as people who've been admitted into graduate programs. And so when we get, so we have three different categories of areas or three different areas that we hope that our panelists will address, and then hopefully questions will arise from. So we have the application process, that's one category, the program expectations, that's another category, and then strategies for success. So we are going to start with the first category, which is the application process. And so my first question goes to Ms. Kwam. So my first question is, who can apply to a North American Rhetoric and Writing or Composition Studies program? And then in addition to that, talk about qualifications or academic background that one should have in their application.
Okay, so I believe individuals with varied backgrounds, academic backgrounds, be it humanities or social sciences, but I'm much interested in writing studies or say composition in general, could actually apply. It doesn't really have to be that you're reading a program in a related field of study, but if you are motivated enough to want to contribute to scholarship or say teaching pedagogies in those specific areas, then you are more than qualified to put in an application. I don't know if that answers the question or if I missed anything.
Yeah. It does. It does. It does. So do the other panelists have anything to add to it? Okay. All right. So then my next question goes to Dr. Dadiblo. What are the varieties of graduate programs in rhetoric and composition writing? That's the first one. And then the second one is, how should prospective applicants tailor their interest to such programs? I'll add a third one, but let's stick with these two first.
So if you take a look at graduate programs in rhetoric and writing studies, or rhetoric and composition, or just rhetoric, or in departments of English across North America particularly, you realize um, the focus of the department reflects the interests of faculty in the department. There are folks who work on, say, translingualism, second language acquisition, digital rhetorics or literacies, political rhetorics. You can think of anything having to do with writing, its production, its dissemination, its circulation, and its use. So long as that is within academic context or outside of it, you want to see how writing is used across all of these different domains. Those will be different areas to consider generally. So when you take a lot of Ghanaian universities, English departments would be the closest to the kinds of research areas you find with writing studies or rhetoric and composition in North American universities. But in English departments, the focus typically is in literature and then in language. And you might find particular programs that combine both of those in Ghanaian universities. So all of these different areas in technical communication, when you move to North American context, you have all of these areas that reflects the interest of faculty. And so one of the things applicants that will serve applicants best is to think first of all about what your interest is. Assuming you're coming from an English department, you're coming from sociology, any kind of humanities background, what your interest is. And not just simply that you have very high grades, have high GPAs, but then whether those interests reflect what the faculty and departments are interested in as well. So those interests as well, in tailoring them, you think about there's a very reductive sense of what writing is for most people. That reductive sense boils down to, well, maybe this is literature, right? Or this is academic writing, but that is only one aspect. You think about writing as it is used, not just within universities, but outside of it. So you work in an organization, there is writing happening there. And writing also not in just the alphabetic mode, but writing in its different forms. So, podcast, for instance, multimodal writing, for instance, all of these various areas. So when you're looking at programs and you find that faculty's interest reflects the kinds of research interest you have, those are typical programs that you might likely apply to, rather than just limiting it to just academic writing. And I feel that's a very important point to emphasize, because there's that misconception that, or writing studies, well, I'm not interested in student writing or second language acquisition or academic writing, but it goes far beyond that. And as a very interdisciplinary field, that is one of the things to consider while you think about applying. In terms of research interest, to your second questions, how to tailor research interest, that also goes to what faculty are doing in a particular department. In fact, graduate programs in rhetoric and writing studies as varied as they come. And so if you are particularly interested in working on, say, the use of second language in writing, or translingualism in writing, then you are looking for programs, looking for those program descriptions, and looking also at faculty working in that area. Particular schools have particular kinds of strengths. So if your interest is more in digital, literacies or rhetorics, and you're looking at only programs that are focusing on other areas, then you're probably not, or you might not be considered a good fit as much. And so those are things to consider in terms of research interest and how to tailor them.
All right. Okay. So my third question will be for you, and then Dr. Lamptey, because so my third question is how can prospective students effectively articulate their research interest in their application material? So you will respond, and then after your response, Dr. Lamte will kick off or start his question with that, his response with the same question.
I'll pick up from something Ms. Kwam said, which is, people from a variety of backgrounds typically find home in rhetoric and composition, rhetoric and writing studies programs, which is to say that as you apply, you want to do some kind of introspection about what your interests are. I'll give a bank. My undergraduate degree is in English and sociology, and I knew from the very start that I didn't want to go into a literature-only program or a language-only program. I wanted something that allows, for some kind of expansive, something that encapsulates the kinds of things I was interested in. And so rhetoric provided, that kind of home for me. And as you think about your interest, it could be even at your workplace. Met and talked to prospective applicants who will say, well, but I was never a TA, or yeah, I didn't do English. If you go back to the idea that rhetoric and composition are interested in writing, its circulation, its distribution, its use, then it means that we write in all kinds of context. And so someone might find that then they are interested in technical communication, right? Or they are interested in digital rhetorics, right? They are interested in a variety of other things related to writing, broadly construed and not just writing in its very limited form. And so doing that introspection, noting down what your interests are and connecting them or articulating them in ways that are meaningful and recognizable for people in the discipline, that's a very important thing to do. Always that emphasis on an expansive notion of writing. I think that's something to consider.
Thank you very much. So Dr. Lamte, could you also respond to the same question? How can students articulate their research interest in their application materials?
Okay, so thank you, Dr. Adjadegbe. You said much about that. So one thing is, I would say, making connections with your research interest. And so at the end of the day, I served in the admission committee, and then there was this question that came up. Um, and when we were tied with two level headed people, candidates. And so the question was like, what kind of alumni are we getting out of this? And I think that question opened my thinking to what we don't normally do directly. It's woven indirectly in our thing. So what are we getting out of these? So probably the department is a little bit being selfish, like what kind of students will go out of my department? What are they bringing to the department? And so at a time when things are tied up, this is where. So we see that making connections, and by making connections, I think articulating your research in a very unique way, such that it's because in the application process you are selling yourself all throughout, you are marketing yourself throughout. So making your framing your research in ways that kind of like drives novelty, or makes people want to know more about your research interest. So sometimes for some of us from Ghana, it gives us this unique opportunity, because there are so many unexplored areas, especially when it comes to rhetoric and composition, where you could look at it from different ways. You could combine different research areas together. So for example, you could you can make connections. For I mean, in Ghana, we do a lot of cultural studies. So if you're coming from Ghana in cultural studies, you could, for example, think about how ideas. I've been here, so I think more about things, but you could think more about like how maybe cultural studies becomes an issue in technical communication. And so you are weaving out connections in such a way that what is known in particular jurisdiction or particular field, it's kind of like complicated or problematized in another field. So maybe you are looking at in Ghana we are doing Obake and then Akwaba kind of like conversations. So you are looking at maybe indigenous people, and you're looking at how language could be used to promote their survival. So you are weaving connections through different um, areas at the same time so that you could stand fit. And these days, the conversations around AI. And so you are looking at, for example, you're looking at how, if you're looking at rhetoric and conversation, you're looking at how maybe technology could support writing in a village in Ghana or somewhere where they will be. So you're just making connections to something to make you stand out. It's really helpful.
Okay. Thank you so much. So connections, right? All right. So still staying on application material. So what are the key components of a successful application to graduate programs in rhetoric and composition? That's the first one. So you respond to that and then we'll move on to the next one.
Okay. So I mean, so I'll write off from the making connections. So when I'm making connections, because in the application process, normally when applications are a lot, one of the things that the committee is looking at is articulating one idea carefully throughout your application. So in your CV, in your writing sample, in your statement of purpose, we could see a strong passion, one idea running through a particular thread, running through, going somewhere. It might not be perfect, it might not have to get there, but you could sense of some of passion running through. So here you have to work with evidence. And again, I'm speaking with from my past experience just this past year. So we look at the most of the things, and there were a lot of claims. There were a lot of claims in the applications, but there were no evidence. So I could do this, and I'm interested in this, and I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in that, and I like this topic, but there's no kind of like evidence, and it doesn't have to be kind of like a research empirical evidence, but you start with your own personal situation, your own personal experience, and then the connection comes in. And so some things like okay, I stayed in this village, and then this is a problem we have in this village, kind of thing. So or maybe I like breaking down technology when I was a childhood, like when my parents buy me toys, I break them down and I look into what are the internal mechanisms. And because of this, I'm interested in the voter um, biometric registration because I want to see how it works to certify. So you are making that connection. So you have to back your claims with kind of like some kind of evidence because most of the times like it's very easy to stay with very adjective leading with things where who are touting and praising, so kind of thing. So and then also we look at what makes it a strong application will be bringing in diverse perspective, kind of like perspective from different angles. When your application kind of like opens up to show that you do not know all. Like you are willing to accept ideas, you are willing to build upon ideas and learn from the department as well. Will also make your application to make you to appear to be somebody who is willing to learn and contribute to the society to the program as well. And then also one of the things that make an application strong is that your application has to be as it demonstrates that you know about the program, you know about the faculty, you know about what the department does. And because one of the questions that come up is that, can we support these students? You know, can we support these students? So if the program is like, okay, you are talking about things that we do not have expertise in, they want to exercise equity and know that we don't want to bring you here in such a way that we cannot support you. So if you have done some bit of homework, you know what the department does, then if you are asking for like to do AI or something when they don't have the expertise, they might want you to go somewhere where you can be supported more. So looking at how they can support you is also one way of making your application stronger. And then also, um, yeah, okay, I'll end here at this point.
Okay, that's great. But thank you so much. That's helpful. So the last one is how important are recommendation letters and what should students consider when selecting their recommenders?
Okay. So again, maybe I'll be from my experience. So application letters, I don't know what happens in other schools, but I'll speak for my department as well. So application letters are the
So
last
recommendation letters.
recommendation letters.
Yes, yes.
They are the last thing we looked at. So after we looked at it, discussed your GPA, your writing sample, at your academic record and your statement of purpose, application letters of recommendation are the last thing. I think the rationale is that we do not want what other people to say to influence the person from the beginning, even from the beginning. So we want to see what strength the candidate is bringing before we could, and it becomes important when normally there's a tie or there's like we are deliberating between one or A and B candidate or so. That's kind of fun. Other than that, that's the last thing we looked at. And so for me, I would say a strong application is recommendation is one that shows that the recommender or the referee knows so much about the candidate and has very close relationship or working relationship with the person because it's easier to see an application that is meant to satisfy some duty or to and one that a writer is very passionate about. And so your application should the person should demonstrate familiarity with your work, somebody who has so much familiarity with your work, and then also um, recommends the candidate in their very area of interest also. The thing is that they should be able to support the candidate without reservation and then have a very high reference. Because one of the criteria we used was that we have like a high recruits and then recruits and do not recruit. These three criteria we have. So you could see the high recruits normally from the a candidate whose referee um, knows them very well. So they might talk about your they might talk about your work, your research, your attitude. Because in a grad school, what we are looking for is we're looking for somebody who can be a team player, who can work with people, who can take diverse opinion and engage in sustained discussions and can do research more primarily or something. So if the writing kind of like touts these areas very loudly, then we could see that this person um, 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 is a strong candidate. And so you don't go to somebody who has reservations about you. Uh, Somebody you write and asks for it within a week, you don't heard about the person from the person, then you don't because it's it's kind of like it's kind of very difficult for somebody to write a very less passionate recommendation for one. However, I have also seen a very less passionate recommendation that has also gone through and passed. And so that doesn't happen often because a student had the recommender saying that be careful, be careful recruiting. I like the student, they say, but then be careful recruiting these students because they couldn't complete a particular class project. You know, so but what this student passed through because this student had explained the extenuating circumstances in their statement of papers that they had some strong financial issues and all things. So that's passed, you know. And so what you should know is that most referees would also think about their reputation at stake. You know, so when they are writing for you, what they know about you is what they write. So even though they might frame it positively, that they think you can do the work of all things, however, when you are faced with some deadline issues or some other issues, it can be challenging of your person. The department you find ways of supporting you. You know, it looks like it's a positive statement, but they're also telling the department more like, in case you have an issue, I just give you a heads up or something like that. So, but you could take it a person. So you go with somebody you take a class with, you know more, and I think sometimes it becomes a problem in our part of the world where maybe we take a class where we are the numbers are the class size is very huge, and so probably maybe it is tutorials you will tell you might attend. I mean, make a professor know you, or you have to attend office hours to be known. Other than that, you are likely to have a generic person, which could be kind of thing. So yeah, so if you are in school now, yeah, start getting closer to maybe learning, forming relationship that would help somebody know you better. Mhm. Your
Okay, I'm sorry. I just realized I was muted. So I'm going to open the floor quickly. Does any participant have a question regarding application process? Any questions on the application process? Okay, so I'm assuming that people are still processing the information. So let's.
Pentecost. Hello.
Hello, Simon. Is it Simon?
Yeah, yes, I'm Simon.
Okay, hi, Simon. Please go ahead.
All right. Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity. I I humbly want to know if apart from my undergraduate research, I can equally write a new one for the application process. During my undergraduate research, I did something on teaching strategies. But now I want to do rhetoric. But for my writing sample, I want to write something on literature. So I simply want to know if I can do that for the sample they are requesting. Thank you.
So panelists, please, did we get the question? So he's asking whether he can write something different from what he did in terms of his writing sample, whether he can submit a different writing sample from what he did or from what he did in his undergrad, whether probably a research project or, yeah.
And specifically, he wants to write something in literature.
Okay. Yes, I would say that we can look at the purpose of the writing sample. So the purpose of the writing sample is to see whether you can demonstrate critical thinking skills, research skills, writing ability, all of these, right? And so wherever it is coming from, in my experience, that doesn't matter as much. In fact, not everyone writes a long essay or an undergraduate thesis, but whatever you are submitting is to say that this is something I have written, and this is what demonstrates my ability to do graduate work. And so long as you believe that what you're submitting can demonstrate those skills that they are looking for, that should, in my thinking, be fine. Now, the other thing about literature would be to say someone can submit something from, you're applying to a writing studies program. And maybe you are submitting something from, sociology or political science. It might be demonstrating the skills I've just talked about, but probably in terms of content, it doesn't point as much to what your interest is. So going back to what Dr. Lamptey was saying about making sure that there is a consistent thread across all your materials. If your writing sample is demonstrating that you are very much interested in something from business or quite unrelated at all to every other thing that you are talking about. Nobody will say that it's a bad writing statement, but I don't know that it helps you communicate the point you want to communicate across your materials. And so if you're thinking about, something in literature, again, there's a slippage there between language and literature broadly for rhetoric and writing studies programs. But I don't know that that might help you communicate the other things that you are trying to put across from all of your other material. So that's consistency and knowing that in my personal statement, I'm discussing my interest and the interest also, an abiding interest is something a lot more that stands out a lot more than simply going with the flow, right? So there's a lot of talk today about, say, AI. Probably your work previously was not in AI, but it was in the intersection between writing and technologies, or writing and computers, right? So building on that to say, well, you are interested in this, it demonstrates that, well, of course, this is not just simply someone interested in the latest thing, because again, the biases that I have observed also, that people want to see those who want to go the long haul, not just simply, and it carries through. Graduate education is considered some preparation for the professorate, right? So broadly construed, right? Of course, people have different career paths, but if what you are demonstrating in there is to say you have some long-term commitment to knowledge production, and it seems that, well, this has come up now, I'm very much interested in it, but there is nothing from your background that supports that. There is no evidence, that supports that. Then it might not be so much a question of, well, this is a great applicant. It might be a question of, this probably is an applicant that is not a good fit for our program, and we can support them.
Do we have any additional contribution to that question, Ms. Kwam? Do you have?
Well, I think Dr. Adeglo has said it all, and I believe the most essential thing is the motivation of the student. Why are you submitting this particular essay instead of what you have on your as your project work? And that already would be on your CV, but for the purpose of the program you're applying to, you should be able to explain or make that very noticeable in your application, or say your SOP, so people understand why the student is submitting this particular paper or essay.
Dr. Lamte, do you have any contribution?
Yes. So with the writing sample, what normally the admission committee is looking at is a strong and a promising, sustained argument that has some kind of bit of focus of analysis and a demonstrated capacity for engaging in and contributing to scholarly conversations. And then also, so they're looking at close reading, analysis methods, and then writing is related to area of interest expressed in the statement. And so based on that, it might be 50-50 sometimes if you are presenting a literature. So, or some other committees may want to look at, so are you having a close scholarly engagement? Are you demonstrating the capacity to contribute to scholarly conversations? And other department, other committee may feel like, okay, even though this is literature, our program might able to support this person to develop more in writing and reading context. So it could be, but that is not guaranteed. It's not something guaranteed. So literature could be a 50-50 one. So you just hope and pray. Straight that if you it's a literature thing. But if it's a writing and writing and rhetoric program, when you are engaging in deep analysis, supported evidence, close reading, and using methods or so, I don't know how that comes out clearly in literature kind of things. That's where I might not be too sure about. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Any more questions on the application process? Any more questions? The floor is open for questions on the application process.
All right, please. Thank you very much.
You're
Simon
welcome.
again.
You're welcome, Simon. Do you have another question?
No, please. I only want to thank the panel for
Okay.
the
All right.
explanation. I'm very grateful.
Okay. Thank you, too, for your
So,
question. It's a good question.
Nancy, I have a quick question.
Go ahead.
So I get this question often, and that's why I'm posing it here, because I feel I'll get a better answer here. You know, in our context, because we don't have courses in rhetoric, I think I know Winneba has a course in rhetoric. I've forgotten which department, maybe it's communication, Department of Communication, or some department in Winneba has at least one course in rhetoric, and I think UCC, because when Charles is there and Professor Poku Mensah was also there, and he was teaching rhetoric. But and well, Beatrice is here, so maybe she can provide some more context. But I think one of the struggles, I have so many people contacting me saying, "Oh, I want to apply for a rhetoric program." They've seen rhetoric programs. They think that they are interested in that and that it's connected to some of the things that they're already doing. But the problem is also because we don't teach rhetoric courses and they haven't taken rhetoric courses, sometimes it's very difficult for them to, I guess, translate what they are doing or connect what they are doing to, directly to the kinds of things that a rhetoric department might recognize, right? So for such people, what kind of advice would you give them as they try to apply?
All right. So yeah, the challenge of translating what you're already doing into this context, right?
Yeah, I thanks for that, Nancy. I get similar questions, quite frequently. And one of the things I often say is to pay attention to the department and what it says that their graduate program is about. So I've had folks who have said they're interested in systemic functional grammar, right? Now there are intellectual traditions that, whether we like it or not, are sort of confined to certain areas of the world, right? So a rhetoric program in North America, in my experience, might not be focusing on systemic functional grammar. So it is totally fine if your master's thesis engage that and you're thinking of broadening that to something in your PhD application. But although you have, all the skills, or you have developed all the skills at a master's level and want to apply this at a PhD level, saying that you want to do something in systemic functional grammar would not be intelligible to faculty who do not, work in that area at all. So what language are the people speaking? If you read program descriptions, if you read faculty pages about what they themselves say they do, right, you can begin to see sometimes a close connection between what you're doing and what other people are doing as well. And that is where that work of translation then starts to happen. So that if you are, you might go to rhetoric programs where folks are doing something on critical, they might say that they use critical discourse analysis, or they are interested in the relationship between the use of language and power. That's right. There is a framework that you're familiar with, right? You might delve a little bit into their own work. I get emails all the time where it will be so clear that the students probably just went to your Google Scholar, saw titles of something you've published, and then said, "Oh, given your work in the idea of genres in public context, I'm very much interested." It doesn't tell me quite much, right? So it means, okay, how closely are you paying attention to what the faculty themselves say they do, and how are you seeing connections between your own interests and the interest of the department? And that, I believe, would be a path towards that translation work as well. I would say another thing closely related, although this doesn't point to what Nancy is saying, which is to say, we very often also think about the application process or its materials as something we can just sit and within a few days complete. I would say that if you want a strong application, that is probably not the way to go, right? A personal statement might be just 500 words or 700 words. If you write long Facebook posts, and so you believe that you can do that within say 2 days, yes, you might write a 500 words, but what exactly you are communicating might not be based so much in the kind of evidence you need to communicate your research interest and ideas, right? I know also that because not a lot of us have been acculturated in thinking about writing as a long-term commitment or a process, right? Something that you've written, you've gone back to it, you've taken 3 paragraphs out, or you threw the entire thing away. A lot of people want to say, okay, what's great? Some people have asked me this a number of times. What grade would you give me on this personal statement? And I said, no, I don't have any grade, right? Because again, we're tying the effectiveness of the writing itself as a product to some idea of grades, right? Which is all to say that please plan far in advance, dig a little bit into what faculty do, what they say that they do, and then connect those with your own ideas. That's just the only way that your work of translation might resonate. Otherwise, then you might be talking about something, quite solid, but as I've come to see that folks here say, like, okay, we cannot support the students. The student is not a good fit, and that is why we might not be able to admit them.
And Miss Kwame, and then Dr. Lamte, do you have any addition to the work of translation, translating what you're doing into the context of the program you're applying to or you hope to apply to?
Yeah, it's a kind of a challenge, but it's also promising, and it's also promising for universities in North America. It's a challenge because students have little to no experience about the rhetoric program and what kind of things you do. But it's also promising because it's not like a gray area that has not been explored. It kind of like areas that faculty will be interested in knowing more about and expanding their knowledge on and certain people. So that's the challenge. It's a challenge that is very promising because it's a challenge first because um, in your writing sample, in your application, you must demonstrate some familiarity with the current debates of the field, a bit of familiarity with that one, and then a description of interrelated intellectual interest as well, or a strong sense of conversations you are entering into. And so if you do not have a Reddit program back in Ghana, doing these three, for example, strong sense of conversations you are entering into, familiarity with current debates in the field, and description of interrelated intellectual interest may be very challenging. And so I like what Dr. Douglas said more in terms of like, if you could have like the published work of one or two faculty or something of that sort, and then engage with it will be very helpful, or read around a topic they are more interested in, they are publishing. So, for example, you have University of North Carolina, you see Dr. Agbozo um, i- i- writing something around technology, and then the Ghana Post or something like that. It kind of like gives you a sense of what kind of interest the debate are, then you work your way around it. So, yeah, getting some sense of familiarity may help at this point. Mhm.
All right. Miss Kwam, do you have?
Yeah, so contextualizing everything they've said with my own experience, though I have a bachelor's and master's degree in communication studies, and I had a bit of exposure to rhetoric, especially with presidential rhetoric. When I was submitting a sample paper, I did not use that paper, though it had, or it's like it speaks to the experience I had. But because I'm much interested in interdisciplinary research, and I loved digital technologies and whatnot. I looked at the faculty and then what they were interested in. And I think three of them had the same interest. And it's not like it doesn't have to be exactly what you think you are interested in. And usually, for most people from our part of the world, we do not start with research interest like earlier in our academic pursuit. It's only when you get to the graduate level that you know, hey, there's something called research interest. It's no more like favorite subjects or favorite courses you're taking. So I realized, okay, I could pick a bit of two from this and this and this faculty from this program. And the nature of the program description, which Dr. Dadiglo mentioned, is also very important. Will I thrive in such a department, or will I thrive in such a program of choice? So I think it's a matter of what you want, what you think you can bring to the table, and how best you can weave yourself. Even when you get there and you realize, I think I made a bad choice, you should be able to know, hey, I have what it takes to finish this because this is what I want. And finding yourself in a place where you think it's not what you read on their website when you applied first. So.
All right, so we have 7 more minutes. There's one question which I would there's one question in the chat which I'll read. And so when I read and contributors, you have 1 minute each to respond so that you can have your concluding remarks. So KM Nyama writes, per what Dr. Dadiglo said, getting to the end of his submission, what then becomes an ideal timeline to begin the preparation of one's application?
I
I'll
use,
say it.
oh,
Yeah,
okay.
go ahead. Go ahead.
In my personal experience, I used 1 year. It was a whole full year for me to write the statement of purpose, to refine tune my my writing sample because after that time I didn't have any writing sample readily available. I did a combined major, so I had a psychology and English, so I used a chapter in my psychology, but I have to rewrite most of it. So it took me a year, a year where I was reading about the program, the Michigan Tech, which is Kwam, your program. I was reading about the program. I was writing. I was thinking through, and it took me about 6 months to understand what the program was about because I was sleeping over it. I was thinking about it, and I was getting more ideas. I was getting more resources. I was going to the library to read more. And so within 6 months, I've had a very enriched idea. And so, like Dr. Dublo said, some of us are coming from an exam-related background where you study for an exam, and after that, you are done with that. So you don't care about the problem again. So we kind of bring that attitude to the writing thing, like, oh, it's a problem. I need to spend a day or two in writing and forget about it. But something it should stay with you. Something you should think about every day in your life, in the bars, wherever you are thinking about it, and you keep polishing because drafting and revising and drafting is what makes your points come clearer. So if you could incorporate that into this, um, it might take me 1 year, but it might take you 3 months to do that. Whatever works for you. How do you do this drafting process?
All right,
Yes, I
Dr.
was going to
Dadiglo. Oh,
say
okay.
I was going to say the ideal, yes, about a year. Although again, that depends on what you already have, how much you've done prior to that. But a lot of programs open somewhere around what, August, September, all the way to December or January. Of course, after January, yes, then there isn't much that you're doing. But prior to that, if it's 6 months, if it's a year, the more time you can spend working on the materials and having other people actually provide feedback as well, and integrating the feedback you receive into the drafts before you submit it, right? Because again, going back to the idea that we often approach these as something that is correct or not, right? And not something that allows us to refine our ideas over and again. If we approach it as, I'm refining my ideas, I want to do this kind of research, I probably need to think a little bit more about it, right? And clarifying things over and again. And so receiving feedback and integrating those can take quite a while. A year is about ideal, but people might find room to shorten that period.
Hello, moderator.
Okay.
I know our time is almost up, but I think if we have more questions, we can take them, because I think this is a very important conversation. And myself, I have a question.
Can you hold on a bit? I don't know if Miss Kwam has a contribution, because from her experience. So please just give Miss Kwam a few minutes, and then we'll come back to you.
I think what Adadublo said, and I'm building off what he said regarding the feedback. It's very important to reach out to people, predecessors, people who've been through the process, know how it worked for them, what did not work for them at a particular time, so you know how better to put yourself out there. And yes, a year is enough to prepare yourself, because if you want the feedback and you're reaching out to people here and you're not getting response like immediately, that should tell you they're also committed to school, work, and whatnot. So at the time they can give you a feedback, it's when you can move on with what you're doing. So it's important to start early than wait till say close to admission time, and then you're now disturbing them and whatnot. So I think the feedback is important, and then 1 year is also very concrete advice.
Thank you very much. All right, Dr. Agbozo, please, you can go ahead with your question.
Okay. So my question is, what is the role of financial considerations in choosing a program? And what are so that's on the side of the program, what are the financial preparations to be done by the applicant? That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so financial obligations and preparation. Okay, so who wants to go?
Okay, I don't mind. Financial obligations. Applying to programs definitely involves some kind of financial commitments. If you want to increase your chances, it only makes more sense to apply to more programs. But that also means that you are paying more application fees. Now, there are programs that waive the application fee for you if you attend, say, an information session, or you ask directly for it. You can explore those options. The more programs you apply to, the better your chances, in the sense that regardless of how really solid you think your application is, there are a lot of people applying to the same program. Now, graduate programs admit very few students. They might decide for a particular year that it's 3 students, 4 students, but they might have received 70 applications or even 100, or depending on whatever program it is and where they draw students from, which means that the decision as to whom to bring in becomes a hard one to make. So the more you apply, the more schools you're applying to, definitely the more, the better it is for you. I know sometimes you might think that, well, I have solid grades and they should be able to get me in. And I often say this about someone I know who, with a near perfect GPA from Ghana, a 4.0 GPA from a US master's program, and who didn't get into any of the 6 PhD programs they applied to. Now, that is to say, yes, there was something that the person had to step back later, in conversations to do, right? Okay, is it about fit? Is it about funding? A lot of these other things. But to say that, okay, well, grades just one component, right, of the application process. The writing samples, the research interest, all of these personal statements. So you don't want to box yourself, no matter how promising the response you receive from a faculty member is. A faculty member who says, well, I'm very much interested in working with you. Yes, they are interested in working with you, but if an admissions committee doesn't decide that relative to other candidates, we should admit you, then you are not getting it. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is we often hear people say, well, I got into a lot of schools, but I didn't get funding, or they say there is no money, right? Sometimes you might know straight away whether they have money or not, or whether they provide funding or not. And that also goes again to reading the faculty pages, the program description, the admissions requirements very, very closely. Because some programs will say, well, we are able to fund PhD students. We are not able to fund master's students, right? Or we are able to, if you are interested in graduate assistantships, then select this box. You don't need to do any other thing. We consider all applicants that are admitted, right? Some programs might also just give funding to everyone who is coming in. Some discriminate between stronger applicants and another candidate. So you want to be sure from the very and if you are not quite clear from your reading of the websites of folks who have been to the department recently, who have graduated from the department or are currently enrolled recently, reach out to the program director and ask very explicitly, do they have funding? If they don't have funding at all, or if they are iffy about whether they might or might not, it might not be worth your while applying to a program like that, right? Because again, unless, of course, you have so much money from cities that you want to convert into dollars and pay fees, because yes, there are applicants like that as well, right? That, I only want to get into the program. I have so much money saved, or I have some funding, coming from somewhere. But if that is not your reality and you're interested in getting funding from the program, then that's a consideration point.
Okay, Dr. Lamte or Ms. Kwam, financial obligations and consideration in your application process.
I think if you're willing to invest in your future, you should be able to make financial commitment. And though there are usually application fee waivers available for most schools, you can get that admission, but sometimes it comes with you do not have funding for this application. So let's do a bit of both. Even if you're doing the fee waived applications, try as much as possible to also put money into applications that ask for fees.
So as I said in my introduction, I am teaching a grants writing class, and the grants writing class has become very critical and important because of the climate in the US now, that most departments at this point in time are not getting access to funding. Most professors have funding freezes, and so the department are struggling. And across the United States, most departments, especially English departments and College of Arts, are struggling to retain faculty, to admit students, and some of the departments, the graduate program is going to suffer because instead of maybe admitting 3 to 4, they're going to admit 1 to 2. And so the reality is very stark that you are likely at this point in time, especially in the political climate in the US, to apply to a program that will have fund or not get fully funded. I mean, there are those with full funding as well. So the thing is that be prepared that there might be some financial constraints at this point in time. But as Ms. Kwam said, if you are willing to invest into your education, you must have to. And then, most schools in the US has application fees. So $90, sometimes $60. And looking at the conversion rates, I don't know if it's favorable in Ghana now, but it might be thinking about 5 to 6 schools. If you are paying 90 or 100 or 120 for each, you must be prepared. So that's a 1 year gap. May helps you to think through if you want to do most of these. Yeah. So all factors into what you want to do, but yeah, there's a likelihood of a financial commitment at this point.
Okay, so before we proceed, I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to our panelists, but also say thank you to our participants for staying on. I know we've exceeded by 6 minutes, but the organizer said we could go on because it is important. And I know that with the panelists, we promised 1 hour. So I don't know, with your permission, can we continue maybe for about 30 minutes? Can we do that? Can we? Okay, thank you. Our participants, thank you so much. I know that probably some of you might have just scheduled 1 hour, and then so please don't feel guilty if you have to leave. But if you don't have to leave, please just stay with us and multitask if you can. So thank you again. Thank you so much for being with us. All right, so there's another question, and I'll read from Dr. Bozo. So I'll read from the chat. It says, my last question. Should I apply only to Ivy Leagues or R1, or should I mix it up? And please, in your response, please, you have to explain Ivy Leagues and R1 just in case someone does not know what that is. So yes. Who wants to go first?
It looks like we're coming back full
Okay.
circle.
Right.
All right. Yes. Ivy Leagues in terms of schools like Harvard, Yale, Cornell, set of 7, 8 schools like that. And R1 being research intensive universities. If you're applying from Ghana, very often I think a lot of applicants probably don't see those or don't know these categorizations of US schools. Maybe they are thinking in terms of, well, this sounds like a famous school, or I know someone who was gone here, right? What you can tell from programs is what they emphasize as well, right? So if this requires a little bit of digging, right? That you found a program, you're interested in applying to that program. You want to see what are they emphasizing about the program. Are the faculty very much interested in research? What do they describe their program to be? Where do their alumni go? Right? If it's a program that just has, say, a master's, if it's just a master's program, there is no PhD in the department, but they're talking about their alumni moving on to PhD elsewhere. So you might explore all of these based on your own interest as well, right? Because the assumption shouldn't be that someone going into a master's program necessarily goes into a PhD program, because there are people who are just interested in a master's degree that allows them to do other kinds of things, right? So reading the faculty pages and being very attentive to some of these details can be quite important. Now, it is interesting also that because of the history of the field in particularly the US, you do not have rhetoric programs in a lot of these Ivy Leagues, right? So you don't have a rhetoric program in Harvard, for instance, right? Like, or you don't have a writing program in Cornell. You might have an English literature program there, which is, say, not the focus of our discussion here. So it means think about the schools, not just in terms of all of these are famous schools or ranked very highly, right? Like, because if they're all in the same kinds of categories, then it also makes sense to spread your eggs, right? Like, not in the same basket, because if you are probably not going to be admitted at one of them, then it makes sense to just spread it across. It's like where we might find that all of those things we see on social media where they say this person has gotten into 7, law programs, like Ivy League programs. So Harvard Law, Yale Law, Cornell Law. Like the idea that's okay, you're getting into one sometimes based on it just makes sense that people get into all of these, which is to say spread them just so that if you're not getting into one program, you might likely get into another program. You might not know the rankings or the focus of all of these different schools, which is also, again, where people who have gone through the system would be your your best resource. So if you have six schools, ask questions about, I'm applying to these programs. Should I diversify the portfolio application portfolio here, or should I just be applying to one of them?
Okay, so thank you. Let me also come in at this point. And so Ivy Leagues, these prestigious schools that are kind of like celebrated as the kind of like the model, the success of grad school. And so they have this celebrity status around them. And that makes them that kind of most times inform their acceptance rate. And so with my observation, with these Ivy League schools, they want to have this celebrity status. So somebody who has made waves in the news, somebody who is very popular, somebody who will go on as alumni that could sell the school, or somebody who can afford because many students want to get into kind of like embrace and this celebrity status. Many students from China, from India, many rich students are willing to pay for it. And so, if you're also thinking about the financial question we have there, applying to this Ivy League school may be very difficult to get in if you are not willing to pay. Students from Asia, specifically China, target these Ivy League schools because to get job back home in China, you would have to have graduated from an Ivy League school or a school ranked very high before you can go back to get a job in China. That doesn't happen in our situation, our context. You don't probably I'm not so sure whether they request that in Ghana. So you might also have to weigh your options around that too. And R1 schools are very heavily funded, very research focused. The school that are known for research, particularly more research than teaching. So if you look at where you want to be, like you think of RR. So I would say a bit of a mix, because from my observation, it's not so much about the school, but it was so much about the project, so much about the topic that the problem you are willing to solve, and the people you work with, the expertise you work with, and you could see the expertise spread across all universities in the so if you want to work on kind of like a voter registration machine and technical communication, like Dr. Dopenyo or something is there, and Mason University. So you might not have heard of Mason University, but it's the expertise that is very important at this point in time. So the expertise and the topic, the community you want to drive, the impact you want to make should inform you more about the schools. But having said that, spreading it across helps you very well, which means you might be willing to pay more.
Ms. Kwam, do you have a contribution?
Oh, ambition is good, but plan B also works.
All right, so plan B also works. Okay, there's another question, and I read is in the chat. As a fresh graduate or undergrad, okay, let me start. As a fresh undergrad, so graduates from undergrad, okay, can I be admitted into a straight PhD program in the US? If yes, what are the chances? What are the chances taking into consideration what are the chances, taking into consideration the fact that I am just an undergrad, and how solid should my application be from someone who may have an MA or an MPhil to their credit? So basically, he's asking whether a fresh graduate from undergrad can be admitted straight into a PhD program, and how solid should that application be from someone who already has a master's of some sort.
Okay. So let me pick that too, and then I'll speak briefly, and then the panel could take over. So yes, you can apply straight into a PhD program, but you also have to know which kind of PhD program is you are applying into. In my department, for example, it's it's a PhD program that that has no distinction between masters and PhD. When you come, all of you come from day one, and then you get PhD at the end of it. So whether you are coming with masters or undergrad, you start from the same level, you know. So depending on the school, other schools have like a master's program separate from a PhD program. My department has nothing of that. It has like a PhD program, and you get a master's in it and you get a PhD in it. So that's one thing that you might be able to pay attention to. But one thing is that if it's a PhD program, more is expected on you. Like more is expected on you. As I said, when I was in the committee, when a candidate who has had a master's a master's experience, a master's program experience, education is weighed with high expectations in terms of their writing sample, in terms of their statement of papers. They want to see more than somebody coming with an undergrad thing for you. So you might have to articulate your ideas very well. You know, so yeah, you can get into a PhD program, but it means that your writing has to be very, very solid. By solid means that you are really engaging with the research ideas. You are really you are showing familiarity with the current debates more with the statement of papers and then the writing samples as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I would add also that it might be important to consider why you might be interested in, say, applying directly to a PhD program versus, say, just a master's program with a PhD in that department as well, right? I'd say just like Dr. Lamte has indicated, programs expect, once admitted, there are no distinctions at all, even if so to give the example of, say, Michigan Tech, when I enrolled in the program, that was for a master's. At the same time, Nancy was in the program for PhD, but you're taking the same courses, right? And I might even say that the expectations are that, well, they're not saying those with masters should write 10-page seminar papers and those with PhD should write 20-page seminar papers, right? So you might want to think about, okay, why do I want to apply to this program, and can I get the kind of support that I need from this program? Programs that admit directly into the PhD as well. There are some that have masters along the way, as to say, for those who might just want to complete the requirements of a master's and move on, or complete the requirements of the master's and continue with the program. That's also quite, that's your decision to make. Now, I know people who went into straight PhD programs as well, right? And sometimes the idea is that because this is a straight PhD, you're coming from undergrad, regardless of what your application materials are, there is the expectation that you know what you are doing, right? Now, if the program doesn't have a midpoint master's to offer, I would say sometimes that can be a risk. And I say that because increasingly programs that have just PhDs, the goal is that, yes, you are doing a PhD, and they are increasingly phasing out, say, masters in those PhD programs. So I know of programs, say, at the University of Texas at Austin, for instance, that over a period just phased out the masters, because the idea is, if you're getting a master's and then getting a PhD, why do you need the master's anyway? You've enrolled in the PhD program. They are not considering, for instance, that someone's goals might change and they just want a master's to move on to another school, which would then mean that a very, quite unfortunate case of someone who enrolled in a PhD program here again at the University of Texas at Austin, and along the way, this was the final year that program had a master's to offer. Now they were having challenges with their advisor, and because of how quite terrible that turned out to be, it meant that working with other people in the department was no longer worth it. That person was able to get, say, a master's, almost like a compensatory master's, because then they had fulfilled the requirements and they were able to move, right? Assuming that they had faced it just before, it means that, well, you don't have anything to prove for, the time you've spent there. Now, this is not a situation that will be unique to a straight PhD or a master's. It can happen in any kind of program at all. But again, it will go back to, what are my goals here? Why, am I interested in, say, a straight PhD or a master's, following a master's that leads to a PhD? So you might want to consider a number of these vis-a-vis your own goals.
Ms. Kwam, do you want to add voice?
They've said it all.
Oh, okay. Okay, they've said it all. Okay. Do we have any more questions about the application process? Any question from participants? Okay, so a quick question that I would appreciate the panelists to address. Oftentimes, applicants from Africa do not know, or maybe they read the program description, but possibly they don't really know what they are committing to, especially when it has to do with TA-ship, for instance, right? If they are being funded and it has to do with TA-ship, what is your advice to applicants who are being funded, and probably they might either be research assistants or teaching assistants? And I would appreciate it if Ms. Kwam, you start on this one.
Okay, so for my experience in my program here, it appears most composition and rhetoric programs require first-year writing instructors, where you have to teach first-year writing. So be that as it may, if you do not have a teaching experience in Ghana, I don't think it should be problematic, because there are still people that come into the program without prior teaching experiences. The thing is, at a point, you might have to unlearn some of the teaching pedagogies and even writing assessment from Ghana, and take on new approaches to teaching and then assessing students. So yeah, just expect that if you do not have a teaching experience, it's no problem. You can learn, you can unlearn. You don't have anything to unlearn because you don't have the experience, but you can adapt and then be better at doing that. And also, when it comes to taking courses, what I would say is, even if the program has a lot of courses that are very wide and not really related to what you set out to do, try as much as possible to situate your term papers within the thing you're interested in. So if you're into new media, try as much as possible to make your work still situated in new media, but within these various categories of courses you're taking.
Okay, thank you. So, Dr. Dadiblo and then Dr. Lamte.
Yeah, the TA shape, I'll just say that it's not simply grading, particularly in the discipline of rhetoric and writing studies. You're taking on the work of an instructor. So sometimes within a Ghanaian context, they said, yeah, a TA, where maybe you have tutorial duties. That doesn't translate in the same way. The idea here is that you have your own course. You're designing the course based on program expectations, templates, and all of that. But then you are also teaching the classes, grading them, submitting grades. So you're doing essentially what someone who is entrusted with a course in a lot of institutions in Ghana will do. So to know that it is not just being someone who is grading, right? Because yes, this might seem like it's common knowledge, but it really isn't. People say, "Oh, I'm a TA," because they're speaking maybe to someone in chemistry who only grades, right? And they are TA as well. So for the discipline, you just aren't grading. If it is a teaching assistantship, you are teaching, and the willingness to, to adapt to changing pedagogies or different kinds of pedagogies in this kind of context.
I mean, yeah. So it speaks of time management at this point in time, because you are kind of like fully employed. You are teaching 2 classes in a semester, and so you are teaching and you're going to class at the same time. And so you are reading students' essays maybe twice a week, and then in two different classes, and then you have your own assignments to do. And so it's like you're working. You know that is you're really working and you're really studying. And the grad department expects you to act very responsibly, professional. You are seen more like a colleague. And so at this point in time, there's little room for excuses like, oh, because I'm having two classes and I couldn't complete my reading, or you must be able to balance those things, which I hear apparently saying that it's all about balance and time management, that you are working at the same time you are a student. So when you come as a TA, you are not just like, oh, I'm a teaching assistant and I'm just I'm studying, but there's kind of like a work and a responsibility component attached to it that you have to you have to look at. And then also here as a TA, you're supposed to give feedback. Students will write in a draft and then you give feedback. So you are not marking correct, wrong, or grammar, grammar, or there's a mistake. A student may get an A, even though the grammar may not be strong because they're articulating certain things strongly. Grammar is the last thing you look at, but you're looking at the ideas and what we call higher order concerns, which I think so. Yeah, are things you should think about.
Okay, so we have just 3 minutes because I said 30 minutes, so I'm going to stick with it. We have just 3 minutes, and this is my appeal to the organizers. I think that today we looked only at application process, so it's my appeal. If the organizers can think about maybe throughout between now till December, if we can think about actually organizing another one where we can focus on program expectations and then strategies for success. I think people would really appreciate it. So yeah, so that's my appeal. And I'm also appealing to the panelists that maybe you can also make yourself available so that when we have to call on you again, you can make yourself available and we can finish the others. But thank you so much for your time. We have 2 minutes. So 30 seconds or 40 seconds each. Could you please just give us your final remarks and then,
Okay, so let me go. Um, what I would say is that apply. I mean, you don't lose so much if you apply and you don't get into it. And there are chances that you get the high chance that you get into it. And PhD programs really want to admit students. They want students from different background. They want students with different research. And things. So in as much as you might not see the value of your ideas or so, it might be very relevant, and so you just apply, and take advantage of all the resources. So somebody said, oh, can I have your contacts? Yeah, they are on the website here, but I could also put it here. So
all right, so whilst you're doing that, so if you're comfortable, panelists, if you're comfortable, people would like your email address. So if you can post them in the chat if you're comfortable. If not, we can actually also, directly contact I think her name, Joyce. We can also get in touch with her later on and then plan something out. But I think Dr. Lamte has already posted his email. So, okay, so Dr. Dadigbo and Ms. Kwam, who wants to go? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say that, plan ahead. There are a lot of different components to this. And very often, again, just reiterating something I said earlier, we think that this is a short writing statements or personal statements or writing sample. I have something already. Please plan ahead. And if you are thinking about this as a competition against people who are just as qualified as you are, just like for any kind of competition, you plan and put in your best foot forward and not put everything, no matter how promising the email would be from particular faculty member from one school saying, this is really great, just apply, consider other programs as well, right? And apply as much as possible.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Kwam.
Okay, so what I'll say is let your motivation show. throughout your application process. And as much as my research aligns, like that rhetoric is enough. Try as much as possible to let them know why you're so motivated or why you're pursuing this particular trajectory. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. I want to express our deepest and greatest gratitude to our panelists. We really appreciate your knowledge and expertise on this issue, and sharing them with us, and then encouraging us to apply. Right. I also want to thank the participants. I know we exceeded our time, but thank you so much for being patient with us. We love you. Thank you so much. And we also want to thank the organizers for putting this together. It's amazing to hear all the things that we've heard, and then also there are so many things I have written down because I personally haven't thought about them. So thank you so much for what you've shared with us. So the organizers have posted. Oh, okay. So we have in the chat, Dr. Lamte has posted his email address. There's also the Rhetoric email, and then I can also see Dr. Dadiglo has also posted his email address, and then Miss Kwam has also posted her email address. So please take note of them and then contact them with your questions. All right. So thank you so much again, panelists, and thank you so much for to participants and organizers. We love you, and we will get back to you.